Welcome everybody to our Learning Live. Today we're going to be talking about Geotab Ace. And we've got somebody from our training team, Marco, that's going to be giving our presentation today. Feel free to ask your questions as we go throughout this presentation. We will do a live Q&A at the end of the presentation. And if you have any coworkers that are stuck in meetings, if you are have to leave halfway through something, no worries. We are going to share this recording and the presentation afterwards, so you don't have to miss out on anything. But like I said, feel free, ask those questions using the Q&A function. If you put them in the chat, we might miss them. So use that Q&A function, and we will try to get all of your questions answered at the end and follow up to any that we're not able to answer here today live on the call. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Marco.
Thank you, Ishi. Thanks for the time. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining to this session. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and I hope we can make this time a really good time for you with new knowledge, with new tools that that can help you in your own business. So, as Ishi mentioned, I'm Marco Benitez. I'm a training specialist for LATAM, and today we're going to talk about Geotab Ace, the power of AI while we are using the data from your fleet, right? So a few weeks ago, I was talking to my son. He's a 15-year-old young boy. He was telling me about a book he was reading at that time, about the story about two lumberjacks that they had like the same task. They have to cut down some trees, they had the same tools, they had the same time, they had the same skills. But while days went by in their own business, in their operation, one of these guys noticed that the other didn't spend a lot of time working. He instead had some time apart, to sharpen his saw, to get some time for his own, and then he started working. And by the end of the work, this guy that took the time to sharpen his saw had more success on what they were doing. And I want to relate this story told by my kid about what we are doing here today at Learning Live sessions. You are setting some time apart to sharpen your saw, right? To learn about a new tool, to get some knowledge that will make a big difference in your day-to-day operations if applied, right? So thanks for your time. Thanks for the attention. We will start talking about Geotab Ace and how this tool is here for you to help you, right? Our goal today is very simple. I want you to leave here knowing how to reduce your time to insight from hours to seconds. So we will be covering how Geotab Ace works, the prerequisites you need to use it, and how to master, the art of the prompt, right? That's how we call it when we interact with this kind of technology. And we will be honest also about its current limitations and the things that we have in the roadmap in this coming year. So one of the things that I love is spending time with my family and watching movies, and my favorite movies are superheroes. And, Iron Man for me, it's the one, right? He's smart, he's got technology, and he can handle really hard stuff. But what is the secret to Tony Stark efficiency? It is not only the flying suit, right? Which is very cool, by the way, but it is not only. He didn't fly alone. He had intelligence in his ear while he was flying. So if we look at this quote, when Tony is interacting with Jarvis, sometimes you gotta run before you can walk. Look like this. This is the vibe today, right? And think about Iron Man. Tony Stark is a genius, is a decision maker, but Jarvis is the one processing millions of data points per second to give Tony exactly what he needs at the right time, right? So today with Geotab Ace, you are the fleet manager, you are the rockstar here, you are the decision maker, and Ace is your Jarvis. It will handle data for you. It will share some insights to you in seconds so you can take the right decisions for your business. So I want to relate this to this movie, right? With Geotab Ace, this is our AI assistant directly built into my Geotab. You can converse with the data just in plain language, and you can get instant insights about your vehicles, about your assets, your fleet, right? And this tool is helping us to reduce the question to answer gap. So coming from hours to seconds, right? So this tool will help us to empower us to make faster and smarter decisions based on your data. Geotab Ace is being built by Geotab with a fleet management drive DNA. So it is not ChatGPT, it is not Gemini, it is an AI tool that it's being built for you using the best practices of fleet management and to help you to get through this. So I don't know about you, but some of our customers sometimes have some questions similar to this one. So you are wondering which driver had the most speeding rate this week and how it compares to the fleet average, right? So how long will it take this for you to answer, right? In the old way, sometimes you have to go through a lot of data. You have to go through a lot of files in order to identify that specific answer that you need. And it takes time, right? It takes also attention, focus of your day. So in this old way, some of our customers or some people follow this process. They have a question. The question is how many miles did each group drive in my fleet by month in 2025? And you have to go to find the right report. You have to, specify the filters, the time, the drivers, the vehicles that you need. And then you have to wait for this report to get this data, download the report, do some Excel work, right? Filtering, probably some formatting to the Excel, and then you receive an answer. And then right after that, you have another question. So how does this information relates to 2024? And here we go. Once again, you have to start all over again to follow this in process. With Geotab Ace, we want you to get answer faster, right? And we want you to get this conversation with data right away. So what we do right now with Geotab Ace, it's that you have the very same question, but you skip those 20 steps in order to get there, right? And when you have an answer, if you have a follow-up question, you just repeat the process, and this will reduce time to insight. It will simplify data exploration with the tools that you already have. So instead of being just looking through all this data, you can just, take a really tasty Colombian coffee while you answer faster and while you interact more with your data, right? So that's the point where we want to get you using Geotab Ace. So Geotab Ace was launched in February. We launched it at Connect. It has been in beta for a few months, a few years also, and it has been improving a lot. Right now, you should have access to Geotab Ace in your own database. If you go to the top bar where you see your profile, the notifications icon, you will see this sparkling icon as well that will take you directly to Geotab Ace. If you're an admin, you have full access to this tool, right? If you are not an admin, you will need your admin to create a specific clearance for you to have all the permissions to view the information. So this will allow Geotab Ace to have access and provide you with information that you need with this interaction that we are proposing right now. All right. So by the end of the presentation, I will share with you some documentation that will tell you exactly what permissions you need to have in order to use Geotab Ace and have it right away in your database. One important thing is that Geotab Ace is built on privacy. So we use, the group association in order to provide you the information from the fleet access that you already have, right? If you're assigned a specific group, you will have access to this specific information about this group. So this is something that it's due to privacy. All right. So how do we interact with Geotab Ace? You basically ask a simple question, right? For example, this one, show the total mileage driven by group each month of 2025. Then Geotab Ace, it will take like from 20 to 60 seconds. It may depend on the question that you have, information that we'll query, and boom, you will have the information right here. You will have the group, you will have the month, and the miles driven by each. But if you don't like how the information is being placed here and probably you want to have a twist on how the information looks, well, you can converse with your data, and now you can, pivot the look of the table. So can you do one row for each group and put the months in the columns? So it will give you the group, it will give you the months, it will give you the total distance driven by month, right? So basically the Geotab Ace understand the context on how you want the information. And as much as you are clear with the prompt, with the command that you put here, Geotab Ace will bring you these changes. All right. So it understands context, and you don't need to be a coder in order to interact with data. You just need to speak plain your language, right? If it's English, Spanish, you're good to go. There are some other languages that it supports. So the biggest fear about AI is, is this making this up, or how do we trust this data that is coming, right? With Geotab Ace, we show you how it works and how it understands you, and we don't hide the math, right? So whenever you receive an answer, you will see the outcome, how the information was processed in order to give you the answer that you were looking for, right? How Geotab Ace understood the information that you were requesting, and how it managed, the process in order to bring you these data. So it will give you the outcome, understanding, and also the process. And if you also want to see, what were the tables consulted in order to get this information, you can look for the SQL, code, and it will show you how the query was made in order for you to get this information. So it is radical transparency, basically, right? Sometimes the results that we get are not the ones that we want. And this may be related also to how we ask for things, right? Right now, prompting, it's a new thing that we have to understand and also to get better into it, right? So if you are not sure how to prompt, how to ask questions to Geotab Ace, in the interface, you will see these different sections about operations, safety, faults and maintenance, sustainability, where you can just click here and you can see different questions that we have in the system, select one, and you can start by working like this, right? And if not, just start writing into this square where you start typing, and those questions that we have, in our system will just prompt. So you can select one of these, right? So we will give you some options. Remember that this tool is being built based on fleet management. So you will have a lot of good resources in order to start working with this. So we call this mastering the prompt, right? That's how we call when we interact with AI. A good prompt should have 4 or 5 of any of these different ingredients, key ingredients, right? So who, which vehicles, which groups, right? What, which metric are you trying to get? When, the time frame, right? Yesterday, last month. So don't just say, show me speeding. Say something like, show me the total speeding events for the sales group last month broken down by driver. So when you are prompting into Geotab Ace, you use at least 4 of these key ingredients, the response that you will receive will be more accurate, will be more precise to what you're expecting to, right? And this is something where we as users need to learn, need to improve. If the answer that we're receiving doesn't provide the information we want, we probably need just to give a step back, right? And rephrase the question, trying to get the data or these key ingredients that we are suggesting you guys. So this is an example of how a good prompt looks like. Show the total fuel use, right? And idling fuel use for the entire fleet by month from January 24 to September 24. So it will bring you the who, the what, the when, and the which. All right. So this is just an example for you. Let's talk about what information is available about from Geotab Ace. So Geotab Ace has access to a massive amount of data of your fleet, right? Trip details, GPS records, zones, maintenance faults, safety, driver, rules and exceptions, even electric vehicles assessment. So all of this information is available about Geotab Ace. If you are wondering if some specific data is available, you can ask directly to Geotab Ace. Do you have access to this information? And Geotab Ace will give you an answer if it's possible or not, right? So it is not about just raw data that we can consult, but this is turning into something called multidimensional fleet intelligence, right? Using the tools that we provide, just like the risk analysis that we have for safety, or the how-to questions that sometimes you as a user want to know how to create a new zone, how to set up a new rule, a report. You can ask this kind of question to Geotab Ace. So if you want to ask, how do I create a custom rule to track harsh braking? The system will give you step by step the way you can interact with my Geotab in order to create this custom rule. If you want to talk about predictive safety, which drivers have the highest collision risk in your fleet, you can just ask like that, and Geotab Ace will go through this information to this predictive risk analysis that we have, and it will bring you the risk with the benchmarking tools that we already have. So it is not only about raw data, it is also about the how-tos, how to do something, and also about the information that comes from these information analysis tools that we have built for you in my Geotab. All right. So let's jump onto how Geotab Ace works. So think of Geotab Ace as a highly trained team working behind the curtain to get you an answer in seconds. This is the journey that your question takes. First, when you have a question, the moment that you ask that question, like, who were my top speeders last week? The audit layer checks it and makes sure the question is valid and safe, and it is something that the system is allowed to answer. So this is the quality control step, right? The audit layer. Once approved, the knowledge layer, which is, trained by Geotab experts, it will take over. And so it looks at your question and finds the right data map or schema, right? To make sure that it's looking right place. Where's the right place to looking for that answer? So now that the AI writes the actual code needed to fetch your data, this happens securely within Geotab's environment. It pulls the raw numbers quickly and safely without any data ever leaving the Geotab vault. So raw data is hard to read. And then the reasoning engine steps in. It will review the numbers, it spots the trends, and it will translate them into a clear, simple response that you can actually use. Something important is that if at any point the system isn't 100% sure the information is precise or high quality, it won't guess it. It will simply tell you that it can provide an answer. And we do this to ensure that the business decision is always based in truth. So this is basically the journey of data when you ask a question, right? And this model is being trained, it's improving, and based also in your feedback, we can get information to make it better. So once you submit a question and you get an answer, you will have the thumbs up, thumbs down button to give us some feedback. This cloud word is just an example of the feedback we receive and how our team is working, to improve this. Just like an AI model, this is learning, it's improving, and we rely on your feedback also to get things better. All right. So before we go into a live demo with Geotab Ace, let's talk about some tools that we have within Geotab Ace, right? So first of all, we want precision. We want you to spend the least time that you have in the tool, right? We don't want confusion when you ask a question. We want like faster workflows. So when you use the @ symbol, this will give you a simple tagging. Once you tag @ you will see the different entities available in the system, such as assets, drivers, groups, rules, diagnostics, zones, right? So you can just type the specific thing that you're looking for. If it's the who, if it's the what, you just select. This will help us just to get better, right, in the conversation. And also, a cool thing about Geotab Ace that it's available right now is that we are moving beyond coordinates. So right now, Geotab Ace understands the physical world. You can ask specific questions about addresses, like just this example in the slide that I'm showing. Like, show all the trips to 2440 Winson Park Drive in Oakville last month. And it will tell you all the stops, all the trips that ended on this street, on this address, right? So you can look for site specific clarity, location context. For example, if some people calls you and ask you, where was your vehicle February 24 at 8 p.m., you can just look for, you use the @ symbol, you look for the vehicle, you look for the address or the time, and it will bring you the activity for that vehicle in that time. Something that may take a few minutes, now it will take a few seconds, right? I was mentioning to you also the how-tos, right? The how you can ask questions about how to create a zone, how to create a custom rule. So right now, Geotab Ace is, a librarian. Basically, it had digested all our documentation. So if you ask a question about how to do something, it will give you step-by-step the process, and it will also add the references that we have in our support sites, right? From support, from the marketplace, from the community, so you can get all the resources. I have noticed that some of our customers have already started using these to train their own new hires in the company. So instead of going through a 50 PDF page, you can just ask a question and you will receive it right away. All right. So it is about the information that it's available for your fleet, the activity for your fleet, and also the how-tos, the information that you can consult in Geotab Ace. At this point, it is also important for us to discuss the things that Ace can't do yet, right? So it's important for us to see the line on the things that we can achieve and the things that we have to wait that are in the roadmap. So right now, Geotab Ace interacts with your data, but doesn't edit or doesn't make any modifications to your database. So right now, we are not able to create a rule using Geotab Ace or, fetching an existing report for you. Right now, the information that will come to Geotab Ace, it will come into information tables, right? We are working on the visualization, the map, and also charting. So every time you ask, these charts will appear instead of going through all this data. But it is in the roadmap. It is coming. So right now, also Geotab Ace can understand the context from engine data or activity. Like if your vehicle had an engine fault, it won't tell you what conditions took in order to get to that point. Not yet, right? It also doesn't have access to video information or HOS for US and Canada. And also, Geotab Ace does not know anything about you as individual, you as a user that interacts with the information. So doesn't have like a profile of you, right? So these are the things that we can do yet, but some of these are in the roadmap, and we will be just releasing these, and we'll keep you updated on any of these changes. So a few tips before we go to Geotab Ace in the database. So remember that Ace does not have access to all data. I presented to you some information that it's available. If you are unsure, just ask Ace, and it will tell you if it's available or not. Always use the @ symbol to refer to entity names, right? So this way Ace knows what you're talking about. And remember that AI is not deterministic. So you have to adjust your prompt sometimes. Try to be more clear so you can get better answers, right? And this is just a learning curve. We don't have to get frustrated. We just have to, keep going and the tool will be improving, and we will be improving on how we interact with this tool. And make sure that you are clear as possible in your questions. Remember, the 5 key ingredients, and don't give up. Don't give up. This is, for some users, this is very easy. For some others, like me, sometimes it is not that easy. I have to spend a little more time, but the results come in time. So let's go to Geotab Ace, so I can show you some examples on how we can interact with the tool. Just let me share my screen right here. Let me know if you can see my screen. So this is how Geotab Ace looks like. As I mentioned to you guys, if you are admin, you will see this sparkling icon right here on this top bar, where you can just click and it will take you to Geotab Ace, right? You will have a help button where you can just click. You can see the user guide. You can see a prompt guide that we have created for you, with the most questions that we have received from different customers. And also it will take you to Geotab Ace training video, where you can see some deep exercise on how to use Geotab Ace. And you will also have access to history. If you have asked Geotab Ace about something, it will take you to this very question that you had. So it will be very easy for you to remember and to go back to this interaction, right? In order to ask, I mentioned that you can just click on any of these options and it will give you a set of pre-built questions for you, right? That will send some data that it's available. You can select either operations, safety, right? Faults and maintenance, sustainability, exceptions, or you can just start writing, right? For example, what is the most common rule broken? You just click here, click play, no, and right now your question is being processed. As I mentioned, behind the curtains, the audit layer is working, the knowledge layer, the reasoning engine, it's working, and it's bringing you the information. So the rule name that is the most common broken in my database is passenger seatbelt undone. Number of events, 512, right? So here I have the thumbs up, thumbs down, right? I can download also this information into a CSV file, right? And if I want to know, how Geotab Ace understood my question, so it gives me the information. I understood that you wanted to find the rule that has been violated the most based on that number of events it generated, and you were interested in the most recent week's data, right? So it will show me the process that it followed in order to get this information. And if I want to know, how was the query written to get this response, here I can select the query. You just click on this 3 dot icon and you can hide or show the SQL query, all right? You can interact, talk to your data. So these were the most common rule broken. So let's say which vehicles have this rule broken last week. Please organize a column by each day. Let's see what's the result. I'm not very good at prompting, so probably if it sends an error, I will show you how it looks, right? And how can we rephrase the question so we can use it. But yeah, so I'm asking about this information that sent me about the passenger seatbelt undone rule broken, which vehicles had this rule last week, and organize the information by column, right? By each day. So let's see how this information comes. And if you are near to your computer, I invite you to run some exercises based on what you want to get from your fleet, right? So right now I'm talking about exceptions, but I can ask about activity within the database. Let's see. And I will also ask a question about how to create a zone, just to see how the information is coming. So here's the information, Yukon Sunday events have 47, 19, 37. So it is giving me, like by vehicle, all those that had this exception last week, right? So let's say what is, the, let's say Yukon. What is the speeding rule? Let me just rephrase this. What are the speeding events from? And remember that I advise you to use the @ symbol. Let's look for an asset, and let's look for vehicle that is called Yukon, right? Sometimes when you are trying to get information about a specific zone or driver or vehicle, you have very similar names. And sometimes when you are typing, you select the wrong one, right? And the process comes. So with this, you can make sure that you are looking for the specific entity that you want. So what are the speeding events from Yukon last week, and how these are compared with the average from the rest of the. So see that I'm asking about the speeding events, right? I'm being very general, and I'm being very specific about the vehicle. Let's just see how it looks when I'm trying to get information general, and if the system sees that a rule is being called the same that others, it will show me the different events that I have. So we call this the confirmation mechanism, where the system will tell me, all right, you're talking about speeding, but in speeding, I have a speeding exception rule, new, over 80 kilometers per hour, right? Excessive speeding, which one you want to use. So I'll just select the one that I'm looking for, and then I confirm. So in this way, the system will be more precise on the questions that I'm asking. So this is the confirmation mechanism that it's being applied in the system to help you to avoid any confusion, right? Sometimes if you look for a Marco in a database in Mexico, you will see a bunch of Marcos, but there's only one Marco Benitez. So we have to be very specific on this, right? And well, while we wait for this, remember the 5 key ingredients. Just like how we interact with people is the same. Who, what, which, when, and also where. In order to get this information. So the vehicle name, Yukon OEM, has 219 exceptions, right? And the average from the fleet is 53. So this vehicle is higher than the average. So it's bringing me the total number of speeding events, and it is telling me how it addressed this question. So if this enter, to the event data and the vehicle metadata, look for speeding specifically for this vehicle, and then calculated the total events, right? And then it compared to the fleet's average event. So let's just ask about how to create a zone. How can I have a zone in demo? Right? How to question. Let's see the result. So we got like really cool, resources. If you go to support.geotab.com, if you go to the community, if you go to Geotab Academy, you will see the answer of this. We have some other AI tools that will help you with this information, right? But you can work right from Geotab Ace. So it is telling me basically how to add a zone manual in the map. It will give me a step by step, navigate to the map, click on the map, add a square zone here, enter a name, right? And then you can publish to groups. If you want to use to do this through zone pages, it will tell you step by step, and it will give you, the resources, the reference that it took in order to answer this question. So it is very fast. It's very simple, and that's just how you get involved on how to ask, get more confident on the questions. So this is Geotab Ace. If you want to go to the history, here you will see, all the questions that you have made in the past. It will show you the different details, and this tool can empower my Geotab users in order to get faster responses on those topics. Let me just go back to the presentation, and let's keep going to this. So where is Geotab Ace going in the next months, in the next year? So coming this year, right now we are working on faster answers. As you can see, the answers are fast, but we are working to make it faster. Visual maps, in order to see just the maps, if you want to see like a hotspot right now where those exceptions are being broken, or smart charts. Instead of seeing these columns, these formatting, this table formats, you will see, based on the information that you request, you will see a bar chart, or a pie chart, depending on the information and what is better for you to analyze this data. Also, working on task automation. So instead of creating a zone manually, you will be able to ask Ace to create a zone of different size in this address, right? It will also be able to create smart reports. And I'll show you an example just right away on how these smart reports may look like. And something very, very important is that in the near future, you can be able to use Geotab Ace from your AI tool that you already use. If it's Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, you will be able to connect the information from Geotab Ace. So you can, also use the power of that agent in order to get better results, right? In order to get better analytics. So these are the things that are coming. This is an example about the data analysis agent that I mentioned to you. So instead of going very granular about the vehicle, about the group, you can just ask, analyze the safety of my fleet. And this will take, the information from your fleet compared to the benchmark, to the peer group, the solution that we have as a risk analytics in my Geotab. And it will tell you just like this: on September 14, 2025, your fleet operates passenger vehicles in local vocation, exhibited a predicted collision of 2.08 collisions per million miles, right? This is notably higher than the bot average benchmark of its peer group. So it will compare with the tools that we already have, right? It will give you context. It will retrieve information comparing to this other model that we have. And who are the ones that are letting us down on this on this risk analytics, right? So it will go through all the vehicles. It will tell you that UK test 3 or 4 are the primary vehicles underperforming. So it will show you the risk that they have, right? And also some suggestions in order to get better at this, right? To reduce the risk. About reporting, like based on the prompting, based on this analysis, the system will be able to create mapping options. So you can see these heat maps about the exceptions, the risks that have been identified, and it will show you group based on trends, right? About your groups in the company, about the vehicles, to identify in a very easy way which are the ones in danger. So this is something that is coming really, really soon, and just stay tuned, and we will keep you updated on this, right? So we're getting just at the end of the presentation. And if you only remember 5 things from today's presentation, I would like you to just emphasize this, right? So remember that Geotab Ace is instant insight, right? We are working on turning natural language into data analysis and just to reduce the time that you get the answers so you can make the right decision for your business. It's built, private by design. Your data is not shared with any ecosystem. It remains in Geotab. We just use the AI models in order to create the query structure, right? But these AI models are not aware of your actual data. So that remains private to you. It is grounded in fleet. As I mentioned, this is based on fleet management. So it's not like ChatGPT. It is trained specifically on automotive logic. So you can get the most of this. It is very transparent. As I mentioned, it can show you the SQL query, so you can verify and you can trust the results that are pulling out for you. And it's secure, right, by design. I mentioned to you, only admins will have access to Geotab Ace. But if you need another user to have access to this tool, you can use, clearances, and based on the role they have, you can grant them access to this information. So it will respect the authorized data boundaries that you have in your company. So at this point, guys, I hope that this works for you, right? And at some point, Geotab Ace will tell you, as always, sir, a great pleasure watching you work, right? We want you these tools to work for you to get better results. And this is just a tool that will have a big difference in your operations if you apply it. And we will share this information with you, with the user guide, the prompt guide that you have access directly from Geotab Ace, some videos, and just a shout out to the Geotab Academy, where you can go out to look for specific information, become a great expert on Geotab interface, and also get the latest information that we have about the product. All right. So, Ishi?
All right. Well, hey, thanks for that presentation, Marco. I'm glad I was here to learn along with everybody else. And thanks for everybody that stayed on the call for this long. We'll do some live Q&A right now. And if you learned something today, if you learned something new or you really enjoyed this, just remember this is week 1 of a 10-week Learning Live series. So every Wednesday at the same time, we'll be doing a new Learning Live. So keep a lookout for those invites in your email, and just block this, this slot in your calendar off so you can always be here and learn with us. So we've got some good questions. We had some good questions that came in. Some of them you answered throughout the presentation, but some of them I want to touch on some more. I know I used Ace since it first came out in beta, and just watching how this is, transformed over time, and how good it is today is just, kind of been mind blowing to see, this turn into something that's really, almost an essential piece of using my Geotab today. Now, we had some questions that were asking, like, is the future version of Ace, is it like something that's going to be a tool that can do things in my Geotab? Like, hey, can you add this user for me? Can you add this zone? Or can you create this rule? Things like that. Is that like the future for Ace?
Yeah. Currently, it is only bringing you data that it's available, right? But in the roadmap, it's changing the way it works. So it will add the task automation tool, so you can request help from Ace to automate these things, right? Just create a zone, help me to create this rule. And at this point, we have to be very sensitive also about the capabilities of Geotab Ace when it's available to do this, right? Because you don't want everyone in your company to make changes on the database, right? Just make sure that the clearances are well for the people. But yeah, Geotab Ace will do this in the near future.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's probably like the ultimate version of Ace, is like being able to like kind of do some of that, those tasks that, may be cumbersome or may take you a lot of time. You just say, hey, Ace, you go do it. And, my always analogy with AI tools like this is, treat it like an intern, and also know that your intern, they may not be perfect sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, ask the question twice or tell them to do something like, oh, you kind of did it, kind of how I wanted, but maybe I wasn't specific enough. And so, just treat it like your intern is what I always say. And you touched on sort of the clearance permissions at one point, but we had some questions about, will this take those clearance and permissions into account? Like, say, if you only have access to one group and you're using Ace, it's going to respect that and only show you data from that group?
Yes. So you have to make sure that you grant the different permissions to this clearance, to this user, but it will act only upon the information based on your role and based on the group that you are assigning into my Geotab. Yeah.
Awesome. So that's, so just so you're clear, the clearance and the groups, make sure that those both are set up correctly. And so I had another question. I saw that you were showing the history. That was cool to be able to go back to your previous chats. Is that something like, somebody asked, can we have different like threads so you can continuously like go back to work on something? Is that how, the history works? Kind of like how you're, if you're in Gemini or ChatGPT, how you can go to your different conversation threads and kind of go back to there and it remembers what you're talking about. Is that how the history works as well? Where you can like pull up the history and then sort of just continue that conversation that you were having?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have run some examples, and it takes, in consideration the questions that you asked in the past. But sometimes the questions that you ask are currently, or are based on any specific time frame, right? For example, last week, and probably if you open this question in 2 months, last week was 3 months ago, right? So it may remember the data that's shared with you at that moment, but you need to rephrase based on the time space that you want to follow up on.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. And I think, the main thing you were, talking about is, just be specific, as specific as possible, and it's going to give you the best results as possible. Awesome. So I also, we had some questions about using this in Spanish or this being available in LATAM. And I did see one of your questions was in Spanish. So can we ask questions in Spanish? And then will it actually talk back to you in Spanish as well?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, you can write down your question in the language that you are, Spanish, English, French, and Geotab Ace will identify, the question and will get answered in the same language, right? So I have tried different examples, and sometimes I ask in Spanish, and since my Geotab is based on English, it will throw me the answer in English, right? But you can play around, and it speaks English, Spanish, but basically it will understand, depending on the language that you write, it will understand the data, right? It will bring you just a layer of language. Yep.
Awesome. That's cool. That is really cool to see. Makes it accessible to a lot of people. All right. Let me see some of these other questions that we had in here. So, I guess on the, it getting something wrong or not giving you what you want, when you give the feedback, you give the thumbs down, you tell it, hey, I asked it this, it told this. Is this training that, or, where does that, information go that like when you give the feedback on like the thumbs down, the thumbs up when it's getting something wrong or doing really well?
Yeah, that's, I found this very interesting. Sometimes the information that we retrieve from Geotab Ace may sound, wrong. My first advice will be just look at your prompts, the how you ask the question. Sometimes rephrasing the question will bring you the right information. But first try on your own. Try to be as clear as much you can do, and the answer will be better. But if at some point the information is wrong, you don't trust this information, if you thumbs down, you are able to write what happened, why was this information wrong, what you asked and what the values didn't, or the information that brought you back, it's not clear, it's not good. And this will go through our team so they can look at this and verify if there's something in the query or anything that can be improved in the model, right? So at the end of the day, this feedback will help us to get this model better, right? And retrain them on these specific matters.
Awesome. That's cool. So I had, some other questions, people asking, you were giving your kind of your examples of some people asking questions of, something you asked that didn't give you the results that you thought and you said, one person said, what am I asking wrong? I would probably encourage you, we probably can't get that specific on this call today, but I would encourage you, go to the community and say, hey, I asked Ace this and it told me this. And let us in the community, see that what you said, and let us, maybe we can go try it out and see, how we can think to alter that. But that would be my advice for like things like that. Like, hey, I was asking this, it wasn't giving me. Feel free to come to the community, ask that question in the community, because we have a lot of people in there that use Ace a lot, and they'll be able to kind of critique that and be like, oh, maybe you should, say it like this or say it like that. 'Cause it's almost like writing code. It's almost like when you're asking Ace a question, you're telling it what code to write. And so the words that you're saying to it, might need to be just altered a little bit or changed differently, just how you would when you're writing code and somebody takes a look at your code and is like, oh, you need to change this and this here. It's kind of similar to that. So feel free to come to the community, post what you're asking, and maybe we can say, oh, you should change this to that, and then it'll give you what you want. So I just want to add that in there. Let's see. We had some more questions. I don't know if you wanted to add any on to that, but.
No, that was a good advice, Ishi. And now, besides Geotab Ace, we are trying new AI tools, right? And it's the same pattern, right? We are getting better on how to interact with these AI chatbots, agents.
All right. I had a couple questions also about like camera data coming from like Go Focus and things like that. Is that something that Ace can interact with, can do anything with any camera data today?
At this point, it's not available, but the team is working in increasing the information that it's available in Geotab Ace. Yeah, but right now it's not available.
All right. Good to know. I don't know what this acronym means, but maybe you know what it means. Here's a question. Is Geotab planning to be capable of handling ETLs on the data in the future? I don't know the acronym.
I don't the acronym as well, but we can take down this question and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that. Or if you can ask another question, maybe breaking down the acronym so we can know better. But thanks for your question. All right, let's see. We're getting lots of questions in. I just want to make sure we get some of these. We got a couple more minutes. So I think we covered most of these with some of the questions. We kind of answered some of these in there. All right. I think we're good. I think we have most of these answers. I may have skipped over some of them.
I see one, Ishi, if you want me. How do you allow clearance of a user that does not have admin access, right? Let me just show my screen just very, very fast. So as I mentioned, in Geotab Ace, you will have access to the user guide in order to create a clearance that will give you or grant access to Geotab Ace. You have to go to, people menu under clearances, create a new one. You can select admin or user and make sure that you grant access to these different permissions for this clearance. So once these are active for this clearance, you will be ready to go, right? All the people under this clearance will have access to Geotab Ace, and based on the groups that they have, they will only see the information available for them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Marco. Thanks for the great presentation. I think you made this, crystal clear about, what we can do, how we should be using this tool, and how it is continuing to evolve and will evolve into the future. So thanks for your presentation. And like I said earlier, this is just our first week in 10 weeks. So anybody that is here today, mark the calendar at this time every Wednesday. We'll be back with some new presentations next week. We Mastering the Basics Part 1. We'll do different parts on Mastering the Basics. But we'd love to have you there. We'd love to have your questions. And like we said about any of these questions, feel free to come to our community, ask these questions in our community. I'll answer your questions. I'll bring Marco to answer those questions. I'll bring in the product manager if we don't know. We would love to have your questions in our community. And just thanks for your time, everybody, today. And we'll see you next week at our next Learning Live.